Welcome to Nucleus, the podcast covering America's top leaders in business and culture. I'm your host, Tripwire. Today on the show, the visionary restaurateur who transformed a hot dog cart into a billion-dollar burger phenomenon and revolutionized the way we think about hospitality in America. Last month, Shake Shack quietly announced something that would have been unthinkable 15 years ago. They're testing AI-powered drive-thrus and automated kitchen systems at select locations. The company that built its entire empire on human connection and hospitality is now betting on robots. Wall Street loved it. Stock jumped 8%. But here's the thing. If you understand Danny Meyer's career, this isn't a betrayal of his values. It's the most Danny Meyer move imaginable. And that contradiction, how do you scale genuine human warmth, is exactly what makes his leadership worth studying. Meyer's the guy who transformed a struggling Manhattan neighborhood restaurant into Union Square Hospitality Group, one of America's most respected restaurant empires. He's the guy who turned a hot dog cart into Shake Shack, now worth over $3 billion with locations in 30-plus countries. But more than that, he's the guy who fundamentally rewired how we think about service businesses by arguing and proving that if you put employees first, profits follow, not the other way around. So let's rewind to 1985. Danny Meyer is 27 years old, has zero formal culinary training, and just convinced family and friends to loan him $150,000 to open a restaurant in Union Square, which at the time was basically New York's rough neighborhood. Crime-ridden, sketchy, the kind of neighborhood where you didn't linger after dark. Everyone thought he was insane. And technically, they were right to be skeptical. Meyer wasn't a chef. He'd studied political science at Trinity College, worked as a tour guide in Rome, sold restaurant supplies in Chicago. Nothing in his background screamed restaurateur genius. But here's what Meyer had that nobody else did. He'd spent his childhood traveling through France and Italy with his father, who was in the travel business. And young Danny noticed something. In Europe, restaurants weren't just places to eat. They were community living rooms. The servers knew your name, remembered your preferences, made you feel like you belonged. It wasn't about subservient service. It was about genuine hospitality. That distinction became everything. Union Square Cafe opened in October 1985. And Meyer made a decision that seemed small, but was actually revolutionary. He prioritized hiring people who were warm and kind over people with impressive resumes. He called it the 51% solution. Hire for emotional intelligence first, technical skills second. You can teach someone to open wine properly. You can't teach someone to genuinely care about other humans. He wanted servers who'd remember that the couple at table 12 was celebrating an anniversary, who'd send a free dessert not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. And it worked, absurdly well. Union Square Cafe became the most popular restaurant in New York, according to Zagat. Not for a year, but repeatedly, for decades. Meyer opened Gramercy Tavern in 1994, which also became a phenomenon. Then 11 Madison Park. Then Blue Smoke. Each restaurant had a different concept, different chef, different vibe. But they all had the same DNA. This idea that hospitality wasn't just a nice to have, it was the competitive advantage. Now here's where it gets interesting. In 2001, Meyer agreed to run a hot dog cart in Madison Square Park as part of a public art project to help revitalize the park. It was supposed to be temporary, 3 years. But the lines got so long, we're talking wrapped around the park, hour-long waits for a hot dog, that Meyer realized something. His hospitality model wasn't just for fine dining. It could work anywhere. In 2004, he opened a permanent Shake Shack kiosk. Same ingredients philosophy as his fancy restaurants. Humanely raised beef, quality produce. Same architectural thoughtfulness. They hired serious designers for a burger stand. Same hospitality training. The cashier at Shake Shack got the same customer service philosophy as the sommelier at Gramercy Tavern.
My name is Tom Sachs. I'm an artist in New York City. For nearly 2 decades, I have been collaborating with Nike.
Nike running is for runners. Nike basketball is for basketball. Nike craft is for everyone else.
Fast casual didn't really exist as a category yet. Shake Shack helped invent it. And in 2015, Meyer took Shake Shack public. The IPO valued the company at $1.6 billion. A hot dog cart that became a billion-dollar empire in 11 years. That's not luck. That's what happens when you build culture so strong, it becomes impossible to replicate. But let's not pretend it's been all smooth sailing. In 2015, Meyer tried eliminating tipping at his restaurants, replacing it with hospitality-included pricing. The goal was noble: fix the pay inequality between front-of-house servers and back-of-house cooks, give everyone stable income instead of unpredictable tips. It was a challenge. Some staff made less money. Guests revolted at higher menu prices, even though the math was the same. After a few years, Meyer quietly rolled it back at most locations. Even he couldn't single-handedly reshape a century of American dining culture. Then COVID hit. In March 2020, Meyer had to furlough 80% of Union Square Hospitality Group's 2,000 employees. The guy whose entire philosophy was employees first had to let go of nearly everyone. Worse, Shake Shack initially took a $10 million Paycheck Protection Program loan, money meant for small businesses, and got absolutely criticized in the press. Within days, Meyer returned the money and published an open letter explaining they'd secured other financing and wanted the funds available for smaller operators. It was the right move, but the damage to his reputation stung. Here's what you need to understand about Meyer's approach. He didn't invent the idea that happy employees create happy customers. That's been documented by Harvard Business School's service profit chain research for decades. What Meyer did was operationalize it with religious discipline. He created a specific hierarchy he calls enlightened hospitality. Employees first, guests second, community third, suppliers fourth, investors fifth. Most companies claim to care about all stakeholders, but when push comes to shove, investors win. Meyer literally inverted the pyramid and built every system around it. So what can we actually learn from this? 3 specific principles that you can apply whether you're running a restaurant empire or a 3-person startup. First, culture eats strategy for breakfast, but only if you systematize it. Meyer didn't just say, be nice to people and hope for the best. He built infrastructure. Every restaurant does pre-shift meetings where teams align on priorities and share guest information. Every new hire goes through intensive hospitality training, regardless of role. Managers are evaluated on employee satisfaction as rigorously as financial metrics. He created what organizational psychologists call cultural artifacts. Visible, repeatable practices that reinforce values. You can't just declare your values and expect them to stick. You have to engineer them into daily operations. If you say people matter, but your managers never get trained on coaching, you're lying to yourself. If you say quality matters, but you don't budget time for it, you're lying to yourself. Meyer's insight was that culture requires the same operational rigor as finance or logistics. Second, empower recovery, not just prevention. Here's where Meyer diverged from typical service excellence models. Most companies obsess over preventing mistakes. Meyer assumed mistakes were inevitable, and instead empowered staff to fix them instantly. Servers can comp meals without manager approval. They can send free desserts. They can make judgment calls in the moment. This does 2 things. It fixes problems before they escalate, and it signals trust to employees, which increases engagement. Research from the service recovery paradox shows that customers who experience a problem that gets handled well often become more loyal than customers who never had a problem at all. But this only works if your people can act immediately. If they need to escalate to a manager who escalates to corporate, who sends a coupon 3 weeks later, you've already lost. Meyer built systems that assume failure and optimize for fast recovery.
Building a new product? Temez Labs takes you from napkin sketch to the App Store. Trusted by Fortune 500s for quality, security, and speed. Book your free strategy session at temez.ai.
Third, the 51% rule is actually about hiring for coachability, not just niceness. Meyer's famous for saying he hires 51% emotional skills, 49% technical skills. But here's the nuance people miss. Emotional intelligence correlates with coachability. People who are self-aware, empathetic, and optimistic respond better to feedback. They adapt faster. They don't get defensive when corrected. Meyer wasn't just hiring nice people. He was hiring people who could evolve. In a rapidly changing business environment, the ability to learn might be more valuable than what you already know. When you're hiring, you're not just evaluating current capability, you're evaluating learning trajectory. Meyer figured this out intuitively and built his entire talent strategy around it. Now, back to those AI drive-thrus. Here's why this isn't hypocritical. Meyer's not replacing hospitality with automation. He's using automation to handle repetitive tasks so humans can focus on connection. The AI takes orders and handles payment. The human hands you the bag, makes eye contact, asks if you need extra napkins. It's the same philosophy as using dishwashers instead of hand washing. Technology handles the mechanical. Humans handle the meaningful. The question isn't whether to use technology, it's whether technology serves your values or undermines them. So let's distill this. Danny Meyer proved 3 things that matter for anyone building anything. First, inverting the stakeholder pyramid, genuinely putting employees before investors, creates sustainable competitive advantage because culture is nearly impossible to copy. Second, systematizing recovery beats preventing all failures because speed and empowerment matter more than perfection. Third, hiring for emotional intelligence and coachability beats hiring for credentials because learning capacity outweighs current knowledge in dynamic environments. The bottom line? Meyer built a $3 billion empire by doing something most leaders only pretend to do, actually putting people first and building every system around that choice. In an era where everyone talks about stakeholder capitalism and employee experience, Meyer's got 35 years of receipts proving it works. The real question isn't whether his model is right. It's whether you've got the discipline to implement it when quarterly earnings pressure hits, and the easy path is cutting training budgets and squeezing labor costs. Meyer's bet, and it's paid off, is that the hard path is actually the profitable one. You just need patience and conviction to see it through.
Thank you for listening to Nucleus. You can show our podcast team some love with 5 stars and a follow. Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Grab news. Tamez.